Alright, so today I wanted to record a video talking about overcoming intrusive thoughts. So, intrusive thoughts is a term I see a lot of people talking about nowadays. It's funny, I actually remember when I first came across the term, I'd kind of taken a break from social media and being on the internet and kind of all of that. So it was like, it was a new term. It was like, what is this intrusive thoughts? And I've been meditating quite a lot as well. And it's a funny term, I find. I get what people are referring to. So I'm going to get into how to deal with intrusive thoughts. But I find it a funny term because when you start to meditate and kind of investigate the nature of your mind's own thinking and go deeper and deeper into your own mind's workings, you see that kind of all thought is intrusive thoughts, right? If you sit there and you try to stop thinking, you'll see that thoughts just come and go, right? Thoughts are just the mind's kind of natural production. I've heard somebody talk about it quite nicely before, that the mind produces thoughts the same way anything else, like the heart pumps blood or this does that, right? What happens though is we get so, and specifically with intrusive thoughts now, we get so caught up in the world of thoughts that we identify as certain thoughts, and we even create an identity out of a bunch of thoughts. And then other thoughts are produced by the mind, representing whatever it is, other parts of our psyche. And those thoughts feel intrusive to the identity that the mind has created, right? So the mind is like, this is me, I am this kind of a person. And then a thought comes in that is labeled as like a dark thought, or it's linked to something we don't want to be thinking about, some negative emotion. Could be from a like traumatic memory of the past, whatever it is, right? The mind will label as, no, that thought is bad, I don't want to be having that, and it's intrusive, it's intruding on my mind. And then that becomes a struggle in itself for people, in that you have this thought that's in your experience now, and you feel like it shouldn't be there. And then it can get really uncomfortable, right? Because you're fighting with this thing that is in your experience, right? Your mind has produced this thought, whatever it is. Like, let's say it's like a really dark thought about doing something horrible to somebody, or just horrible images that you don't want to be thinking about, or shame about yourself, anything, right? That your mind is saying, no, it's bad. You shouldn't be thinking that thought. That's the discomfort, right? The discomfort, actually, this is the technique that I'm going to share here, is you can experiment with this, right? Seeing that the discomfort is in the labeling of that thought is intrusive and it shouldn't be here, because of systems of belief and conditioning and kind of, what comes down to belief, what we believe the thoughts should be. It comes back to this word should always. I shouldn't be having these thoughts. So to kind of give somebody what to work with if you're struggling with intrusive thoughts of any kind, is to ask yourself, what if I just completely allowed that thought to be there, right? And it might rev things up even. It might produce other fear-based thoughts that are going to say, oh no, now I'm just going to get overwhelmed by all this horrible stuff that I don't want to experience, right? All these images that are kind of whatever it is, images that you don't want to see, thoughts about fear, thoughts about like you're losing your mind, you're losing control, anything, right? Anything. I don't know what your mind is specifically labeling as an intrusive thought, but experiment with that, right? Sit with it and say, what if I totally allow that thought to completely be here? And the next thought, the fear-based thought, right? It will always trigger fear, because that's what makes us keep thought at a distance, because there's some fear behind it. So instead of experiencing that fear, and the sensations that come with it, and the total experience of just sitting in fear and allowing yourself to feel that totally, we mess around in the thought space and we say, that thought's good, that thought's bad, don't experience that. But if you don't identify with any of your thoughts, it really doesn't matter what the mind is producing, right? You can choose to act more on good thoughts and less on bad thoughts in a way. Like this is what you could talk about is like manifestation and brain retraining and whatever, just kind of having a good mindset that's going to help you to kind of live a good life. Sure, you can take action based on certain thoughts, but you need to release the resistance and the identification around thought. And then you see that all thought and no thought is an intrusive thought. Thought is just thought. It's just something that the mind is producing, right? It's words, it's narration. Sure, those words and symbols and narrations we can act upon it and then create things in the physical world. But if you're struggling with your thoughts, right, if you feel like you're having thoughts you don't want to have, it's a really good idea to stop trying to distract yourself. This is pretty common in our modern society, is this kind of, that's the way modern humans deal with a lot of their discomfort, is through distraction. And what this actually does, it will rev up your mind even more, because the more you push on something, the bigger of a problem it feels like, right? So the more you condition your mind to say that these thoughts are bad, and then they come back into your experience and it's like, oh no, the intrusive thoughts are back, my depressive thoughts are back. To completely surrender to it, to say, I'm going to sit, and this is why I like to share meditation as a good way to deal with this, because it's the best way to investigate your thoughts without distraction. You can really start to come to these realizations that the problem isn't in the thought itself, it's in the belief and the resistance to the thought. It's the other thought saying, here's the thought I don't want, and that thought looks like a problem because we are identifying as this thought. There's a thought here that is saying, that's a bad thought, it must go away, I must get rid of it. And then you have this physical discomfort, this mental tension. When you see that is a thought as well, right? So the thought comes, this is an intrusive thought, shame, negativity, whatever it is, like gross stuff that you don't want to think about. That thought comes. Then you see the thought coming that's saying, no, bad thought, don't like it, blah, blah, blah. Then if you're meditating, you can say, hey, that's a thought as well. That dissolves. And then maybe a fear thought comes from the fear of this whole process, and then that's a thought as well. And then the more you do this, you realize like, oh my God, that's all thought. I'm actually the space that all of this is arising in. And I was struggling because I was identifying with everything that was happening within the space. That's one of the ways it can be explained initially. So yeah, if you're struggling with any sorts of intrusive thoughts, traumatic memories, I don't know, negative thinking, depression, anxiety, all of this kind of stuff, you can say, what if I practice non-resistance to it? What if I allow it and accept it totally, even if it scares me? And you need to remain alert for the next thought that is going to say, this is too much, or don't do this is dangerous, right? What you're doing is you're also kind of breaking down this little mental individual that we've created through thought, that it's like, I am this person who has this identity, who thinks these kinds of thoughts, who's always happy, or other way around, I'm somebody who I'm always angry at the world, and then whatever, right? Whatever it is that your mind has created your identity around, this is going to start to get broken down once you start to realize it's all thought, right? Once you start to sit and you realize like, that's another thought, that's another thought. It starts to challenge and question your ego, right? This is what I'm using the term ego to talk about, this thought created identity, and you all have it, and we have different, like it's quite multifaceted. We have all different aspects that play out in all different relationships with all different people in all different areas of your life. You're this person in that encounter, you're this person in that encounter. But the mind tries to turn it into one individual, basically. But anyways, what starts to happen is you're challenging this thought created ego, and it actually is trying to protect itself, right? We identify with it so much that it's got defense mechanisms in place, and that is generally fear, right? So the same way if something is physically threatening you, the body reacts with fear and defense. The same thing happens on this mental thought level, right? So think about if someone in the street's coming at you with a knife, you're going to react in fear, and this is dangerous, and I must get away from here, right? The same thing happens now as we're breaking down, no, I'm not actually that person. I don't know what I am, but I'm going to keep allowing the thoughts to pass as thoughts. And then you can start to feel fear, confusion, all these kinds of things. And this is a mixture of like repressed emotions and the mind trying to reform this mental self and defend itself, right? The ego is going to produce thoughts then that say, you're going crazy, don't go here. And all of that is just a defense mechanism. It's actually a good sign that you're going in the right direction. But it's like, what's going to trigger you? That's the key. Something's going to trigger you, and then for many people, you snap back into the thought stream because it feels safer, right? So you're doing this allowing. I'm going to allow my thoughts. I'm going to let go. I'm going to feel the underlying problem. Get curious, right? Curiosity is such a powerful tool here. What is actually the problem, right? There's this thought, there's this image, but it's just a mental image, actually. But what is actually the problem, right? So this is part of the allowing. I'm going to allow it. I'm going to experience it. What's actually the problem? You could start to experience old traumas, and it could be very intense. But then something might snap you back into the mental world where it's just like, holy shit, that's too much. I can't deal with it. And then you go back into the mental world. So another aspect I want to add on here, which can be helpful, is to use, if it is very traumatic, right? If you do have a lot of trauma or a lot of intense, PTSD and PTSD, nowadays we see it as much more of like something that can build up over time just from, stress and anxiety. And for some people it's from extreme events, whatever. But if you do see a lot of that, then working on things that can help you ground the experience and integrate it without becoming overwhelmed, I would say, is that experience is coming up, right? So your traumatic experience is coming up, and you're going to meet it now. You're going to say, hey, I'm going to experience this. I'm going to allow it. I'm going to accept it. At the same time, if it's feeling overwhelming, then using like inner child work and compassion work and like unconditional acceptance can be really helpful. So you actually can work in a space with that traumatic experience itself, right? You actually have the capacity to hold space for your traumatized self from a perspective of, you could call it your wise or your therapy self, right? So to put this into an example, so let's say your really traumatic memory is coming up, and often you can just totally allow, like a lot of people can, you can just surrender it, but for a lot of people it can be overwhelming. Then you can start to actually talk to the part of you that feels the most traumatized, the part of you that feels the most scared, the place where those thoughts are coming up. They're saying, this is too much, I can't do this, I can't handle this. Distract, get away. Just say, hey, it's okay. It's okay. You're not physically in danger right now. I know you may feel like you are. I know that you're trying to protect me, right? This is really helpful to actually internally talk to you, that part of yourself. You can speak externally, you can speak internally, but you're almost reparenting that traumatized self that needed some help when this experience happened, but it wasn't able to get it, so it got locked away as trauma. And now you actually are able to take a bigger perspective, right? So work in pieces with this, right? If it feels like it's getting too much, just say, can I go a little bit deeper into this than I've ever been before? But I'm going to remind myself through this technique that I'm talking about, by talking to the emotion, that it is okay, that I can experience this no matter how intense it gets. And keep practicing that kind of reparenting approach, saying, hey, it's okay. I understand. Speak to your traumatized self. I understand why you're afraid. I understand why you feel unsafe. I understand why you're having this reaction, right? But it's okay. But you're actually safe now. And you're gonna have this push and pull dynamic where the traumatized self and like thoughts are gonna try and say like, no, but I'm not safe. And just say, hey, okay, that's fine. You know, give it space. It's this mixture of giving it space. Again, you're not resisting anything. And offering up this other perspective of that the traumatized view isn't the only view available. That now you can see it as something that's arising in your experience that doesn't offer the threat that it feels like it actually does, right? And you don't want to try to force that to shut down. You want to try to understand it. You want to say, hey, I understand why I've been carrying this around with me all the time, right? It was a very intense thing for that version of me that experienced it at that time. But now you're here. You're the one that's here to help yourself, right? You can work with a therapist. You can work with someone that's experienced in doing this kind of work to help guide you through it. But you can also do it on your own. You can. This is also why I make guided meditation, so that it's like somebody's working you through the process. That's a little reminder, like a little voice in the back of your head that's saying, it's okay, you can feel that. Even that's your more wise self, therapist self perspective, right? It's okay. So you can work in these parts with yourself. Right, lots of people call it like there's different ways of doing this. There's like formalized versions of it, like internal family systems and inner child work and all of that. I just see it as meeting the stuff that you're afraid to meet, the stuff that you've been resisting, and that's going to come out as trauma, emotions, physical stuff, mental stuff, thoughts, everything, right? Everything you've been accumulating that you didn't want to experience. You're going to have to face it at some point. Otherwise, it's going to stay in your system and it's going to keep causing problems of thoughts problems, physical problems, mental problems, emotional problems. It starts to manifest at some point in your life, right? So realize that it coming to the surface is good. It is. It's how you start to experience freedom, right, from all of this stuff that you've been carrying. And it's a relief that there is no such thing as an intrusive thought. There is no such thing as an intrusive emotion. Right, I don't know if that's a term that's used yet. Maybe we'll see it soon. But it's just resistance towards certain experiences. Okay, so use tools, right? Use compassion work. Say, it's okay, right? You can be here. Speak directly to whatever you're afraid of. Even the darkest, scariest, demonic experiences, right? This could be another labeling for intrusive thoughts. You don't have to fight it, right? Just say, it's okay, you can be here. I'm not going to take on the worldview of the traumatized or resistant or negative perspective, but I'm going to understand it. I'm going to allow it. I'm going to give it a space, a voice, something to hear it. I am going to be that space that I needed at one point in my life. That's what trauma needs. It needs to be understood, it needs to be held, and it needs to be allowed and integrated through experiencing it, through understanding it, and then it goes bit by bit. It might come back because there's deeper layers of it that we haven't explored yet, but it starts to go, right? Your karma is burning off, your conditioning is burning off, your shadow work is going, your trauma is releasing. All right, so that's kind of the gist of it, I think. Good luck. You can do it. Check out my guided meditations if you want. I have a lot around allowing, letting go, which can all be a guide to go into this work. And then just notice for whatever triggers you. When I'm saying you're allowed to experience everything, your mind's I'm gonna bring up the resistance in you. It's gonna bring it up. Your mind's gonna say, no, you're wrong, not that. Or maybe doesn't come out so aggressively. It might be like hesitation or confusion. And then also, I offer one-on-one sessions as well for people that want to explore this directly with me, and we can dive into whatever. Okay, good luck.